Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFK journey video. In this video, I want to talk about Faramor in AFK stages specifically because this is one area where he is doing really well for everyone who has built him up. And thankfully, my computer problems have been solved. If you guys watched my last two videos, you might have heard me talking about that. But I'll talk about that when we get into the video. Okay, so the thing that I think everyone is going to be aware of is that Faramor is seeing above average use in AFK stages. If you take a look at any of the record formations for talent stages, you're going to find multiple stages using Faramor. Look at this, we have a team on team 1 using Faramor, and there's actually another team over here using Faramor along with Lorison. And so one of the key AFK stage pushing comps that I've seen has been the twins, Iron, Tassi, Faramor, and then finally Bonnie. And now the positioning can vary, and like when you're looking at this team, you would think it doesn't really make sense because wouldn't you want to give Faramor's buff onto like a Tassi, Bonnie, or even Iron rather than the twins? But even when you give the buff to a hero which you don't think it would be great, it still ends up being pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a look at how he is just doing in AFK stages. So basically what has happened, and is kind of weird, is that Almas is getting a little bit phased out. Now that you have the twins, we're giving energy recovery to Iron, even haste buff to your team. What happened to that hero? There's one enemy hero who's off the field or something. I don't know if it's a glitch. But basically now you don't need Almas for that prolongation of the crowd control. You can just have the twins to cycle your ultimate and give you haste buff, and you can permanently lock down the enemies. One reason Faramor is so good is what you're going to see here. When he gets one kill, his circle expands in range to 2 tiles, and that basically covers most enemies, especially if you're grouping them up with an Iron. And even before this, when Iron groups up the enemies into like 1 tile basically, Faramor's circle is going to be hitting all of those enemies and dealing this bonus damage. And you're going to see the damage chart at the end of this. His damage output is insane, and that is actually a really important factor for AFK stages. Like if you see Faramor here, like almost 6 billion damage. Tassi did more than him, but basically now you have great crowd control with Tassi, Iron, and twins to cycle them. You now also have massive damage with Bonnie, Faramor, Tassi as well, and it has basically become now an optimized team comp for AFK stages with the surging spell. The reason why it is so important to have damage in AFK stages is because of the high deficit. A lot of times what happens is not that you can't control them, like you can fully lock them down with Iron Almas twins, but sometimes if you don't have the damage burst, you're going to be unable to clear the stage because the enemies are just going to survive at the end and run out the clock. And now with Faramor, that problem is not going to happen. So let's see here, we've come to a stage where I guess Faramor is not used on any of these teams, like in the recommended formation. However, I actually do want to try like the same team with Faramor and see if it could work, because if you get like a bit over leveled, it might be able to work. I think the problem here is you're not able to lock down all of the enemies, and this is kind of the issue, the drawback of Faramor for AFK stages. Like here, he's only centering a circle around one enemy. Now, when Iron regroups him up, Faramor will recast his ultimate because like it disappears if there's no one within range. And now look, he's in a really good position. 3 or 4 enemies were grouped up into that circle, but then they jumped out of it, and now Faramor has to recast it. So like that's why this specific stage with jumping mobile enemies, or they're not going to be the best for Faramor. But even with them, like look at this, eventually Faramor is gonna get value from his circle, and you are gonna lock them down. And now it's even expanded in his radius, and yeah. So I think the thing about Faramor, because he offers a high amount of damage, also he can buff another hero on your team to improve their damage further, but that is kind of like a minor point. Like as you can see here, optimal formations are not even running him buffing any of your key damage dealers, so that's not really needed. Okay, here there's no Faramor, but the thing with him is that his circle is basically bound to get value, and because he's an ultimate dependent hero but gets a lot of damage off with it, those are the heroes which shine in AFK stages, like Tassi as well. She's very ultimate dependent. However, in AFK stages, she's able to cycle it, especially with the twins now. So now I'm going to show you a different option for a team, like you have here. Tassi and Faramor on the Stellar Bond, and Iron can be off of it. And you're going to see that this team also works really well, and it actually kind of like maximizes the damage, because now Tossi's also getting buffed. Faramor is basically going to ensure that he doesn't run out of energy. But in this season specifically, because of his charms, which are also a major factor why Faramor is so good this season, they give him energy recovery, 40 energy every second. The twins also add energy on top of that. And like, you don't need all of that energy recovery. It becomes kind of overkill. He is easily able to maintain his circle, even just with the charm effect alone. But what I'm worried is, like, if this charm effect leaves, is it going to be as effective? But like, look at this. This is just absolute destruction. I know we are a bit over leveled for compared to the recommended formations. Like, if we see over here, recommended formations, like, okay, some of them are 1040, but I was seeing a lot of 1100s as well. But okay, yeah. So we are fairly over leveled, but when you look at a comp like this, Faramor buffing up Tossi, which I think is probably the optimal, and also Stellar Bond onto Faramor and Tossi, both who are the hardest hitting damage dealers in this comp. Like, it increases his stats further, so that's why I think this is good. But like I said, I guess there's a couple problems with Faramor. Number one is if he is able to be killed by the enemies, then of course he's not runnable in a stage. Number two is if the enemies are really mobile and they keep jumping out of his circle, that can lower his value, and that's why, for example, in Lucia, the boss is not going to be a great option. But if you can group them up, like you do here, crowd control them, put the circle around them, it's just so much value that Faramor is getting off. Surging Spell really is one of the best artifacts for him, though, because it not only has damage, but it has that shielding, which Faramor needs. Because Faramor, if you see some stages and you run Faramor into every stage, eventually you're going to run into a stage where Faramor just gets nuked, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it just means he's not a good option there. So a lot of the record formations have like lineups like this. I don't know if they're better, but like personally, I love running this specific lineup we have here. And if you're able to survive with this, I think it's optimal in terms of damage. Because, like we said, buffing up the Tossi and the Faramor is really good. But this, in my opinion, is the overall meta AFK stage comp. It is Iron, Tossi, Twins, Bonnie. It always has been that this season. And then usually the final option is Almas. But now you're just like, okay, you have plenty of crowd control with Tossi and Iron, and the twins cycling them, and even Bonnie's ultimate, that you can just afford to go for more damage, which is Faramor. And Faramor is, of course, far more damage than Almas. Almas contributed no damage. In the higher deficits, you need this damage. Now, one thing which kind of skew, like, you might have noticed after getting Faramor and building him up, you're able to push AFK stages massively. And, like, people have said they've pushed hundreds of AFK stages when they were stuck on stages before that. Another thing you have to keep in mind, though, is Faramor's come out at a time where you're also likely upgrading the mythic charms of your heroes. Like, if you get blast charms onto Tossi, I noticed when I got the blast... Okay, here we're actually getting low. Faramor almost died. Tossi almost died as well because the enemies are nuking us hard. Surging Spell barely kept us alive. Yeah, and so, like, I think this is a specific stage where probably Faramor isn't the best. Also, they weren't really well grouped up, but now they're grouped up with Iron. Faramor casts his ultimate. But basically, yeah, I don't think... I originally thought that one problem with Faramor, especially on auto, is that Iron can keep looping up enemies outside of his circle, and then he has to recast. What I've seen is it's not that big of an issue, even if he has to recast his ultimate. Honestly, it's not a big deal. Like, he's fine to recast it and just keep the damage flowing. There's not really much downtime on that. Okay, but yeah, if you got your Tossi Blast Charms, that gives you a massive advantage for AFK stages, because not only does it have longer crowd control, like 6-second hypnotization rather than 3.5 seconds, it also has more damage, because for each of those 6 seconds, you're going to be taking that damage from the ultimate skill of Tossi. At least that's how it was worded, and last time I checked, that is how it worked. So I'm assuming that is the case, and that is why you're seeing massive damage from Tossi in these stages. I want to see at the end of this stage, with Tossi being buffed up by Faramor as well, and also Faramor and the Stellar Bond, what is their damage output like? But when you see like runs like this, it's just like making easy work of these AFK stages. Okay, so let's take a look at the damage chart. Yeah, I mean, not a huge amount here. It was basically Bonnie, Faramor, and Tossi, but they still were the top 2 damage contributors, Tossi and Faramor, and you get an easy clear with many seconds to spare. Now, what I want to talk about is this boost of AFK stages. Is it even important? Because this boost is happening at a late point in the season where already kind of it's being easy to be over the cap, like at this later point where you get the Mythic Plus Charms, you're probably with most of your teams, if you have Supreme Plus Heroes, of the meta AFK stage teams, you're going to be able to push beyond the cap. Like you're seeing here, I'm even kind of over level for the point I'm at. I could push far beyond. And then it's not really needed. Like pushing this far, honestly, it has very low returns. And the real only value I consider of AFK stages is it enough for it to allow, for example, free-to-play players to push the AFK stage limit in the early season? I think that's the only challenging part of AFK stages in AFK Journey, basically. Yeah, a lot of teams not using Faramor here, but Faramor also does work in all of these. Yeah. So that is the only thing. And we don't know how he will perform in early game AFK stages. Like, the thing about early game AFK stages, if I remember correctly, it seems more like you have survival issues, and not necessarily do you have to deal more damage. It's more about, like, just surviving, controlling the enemies, and then even if you don't have huge damage, you're probably going to be able to clear it. But if the enemies get 1 second of not being controlled, and they can get off their skills, get off their ultimate, things like that, that can cause problems. So if it depends on that. Like, is Faramor going to be good in early game AFK stages or not? Because that is more important in my opinion compared to what we're seeing right now, which is late game AFK stages. But the other value of Faramor, which is always going to be valuable, is not only his damage output, but the fact that with enemies within his circle, they are not able to recover any health from his ultimate ability description. That is a huge effect. Now, the Supreme Plus of Faramor, I think, is really lackluster, and honestly, just feels like it's not really contributing much. It reduces the vitality of enemies if they're killed and they revive within your magic circle. That's so many ifs. They have to be killed, and not only kill, but they have to have some revival mechanic, which already eliminates many heroes from AFK Journey. Then even if they do revive, they have to revive while your magic circle is still active. I don't think it's that if they die and at the point of death, they were within the circle. The description says that when they revive, if within the magic circle, they'll have 50 reduced vitality. I don't know exactly how that would work. Maybe it is that even if they're killed within the circle, they are going to have that reduced vitality, which would make a lot more sense and be more actually useful. But even then, 50 reduced vitality, honestly, it reduces the healing of the opponent, but is it really going to change that much of a fight? I don't know. It really just all comes down to the fact that he denies healing onto enemies within his circle. I think that is a massive effect. And like, especially for those certain stages where you need to deny healing, it is so much value. No other hero in the game does that. And that is why probably always Faramor is going to have good AFK stage use. But now I just want to end off the video by talking about Dream Realm, because now I've done a lot of AFK stages. I've talked for a long time. Yeah, we talked for 13 minutes. Yeah. Okay, so we have to wrap things up. But I want to talk about 2 things. I also have to talk about my computer, what happened, kind of, briefly. Okay, but let's talk about Dream Realm. So, Dream Realm, yeah, I think people might be a little bit worried now, because he was the top option for Snow Stomper and Lone Gaze, but only by a slight amount. But on the VN server, he was a top option. And he was even proven to work. I did a test of Lone Gaze, proven to work, like, in place of Mikola for, like, a non-Heroic team, like a third best Lone Gaze team. So, he even improved that. So I think he's going to definitely have use in those 2 bosses. But in Elucia and Thalassa, he cannot be used at all. And now in Crystal Beetle, it's such an optimized team with Shakira, Twins, Freesto, Ludovic, Smokey. There's no room for Faramor to improve the damage at all. And that is kind of the problem. So now the question is, Orison tomorrow. Orison also has a very similar comp, if I remember correctly, to Crystal Beetle, using Smokey, Ludovic, Twins, Freesto, Shakira. So the question will be, can Faramor take the place of any of those heroes? He can't take the place of Twins. He can't take the place of Freesto. He can't take the place of Shakira. Of course not, because Shakira is a major buffer. It would have to be removing Smokey or Ludovic, and Ludovic is insane with Mythic Plus Charms as a damage dealer. So I doubt it would be replacing Ludovic. And like Smokey, he has good damage, but also he has massive attack buff and haste buff for your team. So like, because these heroes in this optimized comp were so great, I don't know how Faramor is going to be useful for Orison. And all of these heroes are pretty free-to-play friendly. These are all the free-to-play recommended heroes. And so, like, I don't know why we would ever want to run a Faramor team. We'll have to wait and see about that, but this is just my initial thoughts. Now, for Plague Creeper, Craze, Shellbrute, I think he has a chance in both. Plague Creeper, apparently he is being good for the Titan. I think there was a Titan Weaver with Plague Creeper or something. It appears that he is good in Plague Creeper because he's going to get kills. That's going to widen the radius of his sphere, his circle, sorry. And also he deals good damage. So, and he can buff up like your Harok and stuff. I feel like there might be I think Faramor might be a good option for Plague Creeper, but even right now, the Plague Creeper comp is really refined. There's Twins, Festo, Talene, Harok, all major damages, and then Smokey. And like, are you really going to replace Smokey, who has good damage, good attack buff, and healing, although the healing is not needed probably in endless bosses? Like, what are you going to do? Or are you going to replace, I don't know how you could replace any of the other heroes, so that's kind of the problem. Crazy Shellbrute, I'm interested in one thing about Crazy Shellbrute, which is the fact that when the hero gets gulped, their skills still are in effect. So like, I wonder, does a magic circle on the Crazy Shellbrute stay in effect while the Faramor gets gulped? Honestly, it could happen. Mikola's Curse Sphere is in effect while she is gulped. So I don't understand, why wouldn't Faramor's also be able to? But if he is able to, that is going to be huge value because you can gulp him and still get off more damage, bonus damage against Crazy Shellbrute. So I'm feeling like Plague Creeper, Crazy Shellbrute, Faramor has a chance. Snow Stomper, Lone Gaze has already proven himself. The other 4 bosses I think is very unlikely because the other problem with Orison is that he stacks up Fury that reduces the damage he takes, and so like you need to just go for raw HP per second damage dealers and let him stack up and not really care about it at all because the stacks can only reduce like true damage, regular damage. It cannot reduce HP per second damage at all. It's a fixed amount. So that's why like HP per second damage deals do better in Orison. Okay, so that's it for basically this video about Faramor. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about it. If you have had any better luck with different teams involving Faramor in AFK stage or anywhere, feel free to let me know. Even in PvP, you can let me know what you think about that. And just to briefly talk about my computer. So my computer's issue was that the fan was not working properly. So my CPU wasn't getting like a high usage because I guess it was overheating or something. All the cores were not being used. So what I've done, I've gotten that replaced, like a different fan or cool heat sink for the processor, and now it's working well. However, the thing that I got, it doesn't actually fit the case, the computer case I have. So yeah, we basically did a do-it-yourself attachment. Is not actually correct, but I think it should hold. But yeah, that's basically what's been done. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. That's gonna be it for this video. I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video. If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please smash that subscribe button. We're on the road to 20,000 subscribers. Let's hit it before the end of the season. But thank you guys for watching. I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Feel free to join my AFK Journey Discord server to chat with me more. There's a link to that in the description of this video. But thank you for watching. I'll hopefully see you in the next video. And until then, everyone, peace out for now.